Okay, dialectics of dialectics in Pokemon. Dialectics means that if you want to understand something, you don't have to look at its current form, but at its whole life, how it was born, how it developed, through which stages. And this will be now done with dialectics itself. We will deconstruction. Using deconstruction, we will understand dialectically. We'll look which stages led us to our current understanding of dialectics. The first stage is, before we have any dialectics, we have one truth, where we deny the existence of inner contradictions and say that contradictions are merely distortions of the truth. But this doesn't work forever. Eventually we encounter a new force which cannot be reconciled. We cannot say that this is just derivative of our previous position. We get a real antagonism which we have to recognize, and we get a battle between the two sides. Here the left side, the right side, battle each other in a dualistic fury, complete anger and resentment into warfare. But here we want to reconcile it, and this brings us to stage 3, where we bring in a third force, which makes peace between the two opposing forces. And this is what is called thesis, antithesis, synthesis. But is this picture not too simple? What is this picture actually trying to cover up? And this leads us to the most interesting stage, which is stage 4, where we recognize that this attempt to synthesize the two opposing forces is actually just pure ideology that doesn't actually resolve antagonism, but it just obfuscates it and makes it invisible. And it does so by repressing certain traumatic elements, and this creates a surplus which creates a new antagonism. Now here we should not fall for the naive reading, where we say that Arceus is trying to keep the synthesis together and Giratina is trying to create conflict, but rather we should recognize that Giratina is inscribed into Arceus already from the beginning. The question is not why is Giratina so evil, the question is why did Arceus create Giratina in the first place? The fact that Arceus created Giratina shows that there was already something wrong with Arceus itself. Therefore, the contradiction is inevitable and we have to accept it. So in this 5th stage, we get to post-dialectics, where we no longer continue sublimating, making new positions, but we accept that there will always be an antagonism, and this is the end of history, and we have in a failure to formulate any alternative. And this is the predicament in which we're stuck today. We do not know how to move further. And this is also symbolized by the fact that Pokemon Black and White are followed up by Pokemon Black and White 2 instead of a single third game, which would try to synthesize them. Now, instead of an attempt at a synthesis, we have 2 follow-up games which show that the contradiction is real and irresolvable. And we are stuck in this predicament ever since. In all other generations, we just have the same conflict between 2 opposing forces, which represent the sublimated antagonism, its cynical resignation and inauthentic rehash of the same thing forever. And this is where we are stuck. We should note that the various stages of the dialectics are also very reminiscent of the Kubler-Ross model of grief. The first stage is denial, where we deny that any antagonism exists and pretend that there's only a single truth. In the second stage, we have anger, because we recognize that there are actually 2 opposing sides and that there is a real antagonism. This leads us to the 3rd stage, where we try futilely to synthesize the 2 positions in an attempt to bargain peace. But this ultimately fails, and this failure leads us to depression. Finally, we have to accept that there will always be an antagonism, there will always be conflict, and we have to live with that. But what are we actually grieving about? The thing which we are grieving about is the downfall of the Pokemon franchise. What makes us so sad and what we have to accept through 5 stages is the fact that the new games are trash. But next up, we recognize that the dialectics in Pokemon is very similar to Marx's theory of historical materialism. We can recognize that true communism can only be achieved once the dialectic proceeds further and we stop making rehashes of the same thing over and over again. So we see that the downfall of the Pokemon franchise was caused not by simple incompetence, but by deep metaphysical and structural problems. This is not just a problem of the Pokemon franchise, but it is a symptom of wide-ranging problems of society as a whole.